Hi everyone and welcome to another segment of AEC-tech Talks. These talks are organized by AEC+Tech, a platform and community established to help you stay updated and engaged with the latest tools and technologies within the building industry. Today we are joined by three amazing panelists who are all technology leaders at three prominent design and construction companies. We are going to learn from their experience using new tools and technologies for enhancing their workflow. This event will be recorded and saved on AEC+Tech YouTube channel. If you have any questions for our panelists during the event, please feel free to post them in the LinkedIn or YouTube chat box, and we will do our best to answer them in the Q&A portion at the end of the event. I'll briefly introduce each of our three wonderful panelists before their presentation, and then we'll let them talk more about themselves and their work. So first we will have Joanna Sabek. Joanna is an architect and computational designer born in Poland. She holds an MArch in architecture with a specialization in computational design for extreme environments from Lund University in Sweden. Over the last couple of years, she has been particularly interested in biomimicry and the application of complex systems into design geometry. Currently, she's a member of the G-Code Applied Research team at Heatherwick Studio, where she explores topics such as rationalization, environmental design, and extended reality. Throughout her time at the studio, Joanna has worked on a diverse range of projects and typologies globally, including residential, mixed-use, commercial, and master planning. Welcome, Joanna, and so wonderful to have you. Please feel free to share your screen and tell us about your work.
Hello, everyone. Happy Friday. Thank you so much for the invitation. At Heatherwick Studio, we have a very diverse portfolio of projects, from anything like a perfume bottle to bridges, museums, and transport. And the studio is comprised of over 200 people from very different backgrounds, but we mostly call ourselves problem solvers, and we are interested in anything 3D. And what I would like to talk about is how we implement new technologies into that type of environment. Obviously, nothing ever happens without the right people. The core team behind any new tech in our studio is called G-Code, which stands for Geometry and Computational Design. And that team has grown quite a lot over the last year and a half. The team is made out of computational designers and specialists who work across different projects and different workflows, but also highly skilled designers who support projects on the daily basis as they are fully embedded in the project work. So what do? We have three different areas of interest where geometry is probably the closest to projects because it comes from the project needs, and that includes anything that relates to automation, so optioneering, parametrization, but also analysis, rationalization. We also look a lot into prototyping and fabrication. We have our applied research cluster that focuses on extended reality, sustainability, AI, and generative design. And for knowledge sharing, we do talks like this one, but we engage also in a lot of workshops, hackathons, and we provide training to members of our studio. For computational geometry, which is really connected to our projects, we have a few different ways of supporting teams and providing different types of tech within that field. So one of them is helping with really ad hoc requests where we can help with parametric modeling for complex shapes that we already like. And we also help with optioneering and speeding up design process, as well as contributing into coordination and highly detailed construction modeling. We engage a lot into analysis and rationalization. So for instance, in case of this project, We started with the analysis where we found out that in the design we had 555 balcony types, and through processes of rationalization, we managed to go down to 20 types for value engineering without damaging the design. We also look into geometry set out for prototyping, as well as we engage with the BEAM team for interoperability. We have a really nice workshop with super talented makers. So we also try to find ways how we can take their beautiful models and digitalize them. Therefore, we also use 3D scanning and create live links between those models and Rhino and Grasshopper or other modeling software, so we can further develop those designs. We also started to look into something that we at the moment called advanced modeling, and it's basically revisiting a little bit of how we engage with material modeling, because previously we used to rely quite heavily on Kangaroo, but that hasn't been very efficient. And over the last 6 months or so, my colleagues have been looking a lot into working with Maya, Houdini, and Omniverse. And we're slowly starting to get really, really nice results where the material control is much more user-friendly than in our previous workflows. And that's been more and more often applied to projects at object scale, but also in interior design, as you can see with those images. We also engage a lot with extended reality, and this is something that falls into our immersive media cluster. So it's mainly XR for projects, obviously. We use different types of technologies. One of them is augmented reality, and I've been personally pushing a lot for engaging with augmented reality for site, so we can actually have full-scale structure or design reviews of our projects where they hopefully will stand one day. And this is also great for design reviews, especially for our object team or smaller design elements for our buildings, because that gives designers and architects a chance to interact with whatever they're working on in one-to-one scale. And this is actually really rare for most of us when we see our really large-scale projects on really tiny screens most of the time. We also started to look how we can implement more of virtual reality into our design process. And this is something developed together with MindDesk. So it's a live link between Unreal Engine and Grasshopper, where the parametric design options are previewed live with an Unreal Engine. We use a little bit of XR for collaboration. This is a platform called Spaceform, which allows different users do a virtual review in a virtual environment, and that can be done in this sort of virtual collaborative space, but also allows users to go inside of the model and do a review within the model and sketch on different planes, which is really useful because, again, that's the scale factor in how immersive that type of technology is. So suddenly we can experience the design so much more. And I think this is something very important for most of us at the studio. We also use XR for making. So in this case, it's again augmented reality. As you can see, the sculpture on the right-hand side would be extremely difficult to make if we try to translate it into 2D. Therefore, that type of technology allows us to do things much more precise and more efficiently. We are really trying to push more for environmental tools these days, considering that a lot of our projects are really focused around a public realm and obviously current climate crisis. What we do in-house is two types of analysis, or two stages of analysis. One we called climate charts, which is basically a microclimate classification. And we also use various in-house environmental tools, which allow us for quick assessment of options and initial proof of concept. So for the climate charts, it's basically a visualization of weather conditions for various cities in the world, and we provide baseline outdoor comfort data. So we do that for every project during the first week after it kicks off. So all of our designers are well informed and they can take the environmental factors into consideration from the very beginning. We started collating these reports into something that now we call Climate Atlas, and it became our internal online library of climate classification for different cities around the world. And obviously it's growing as we get more and more projects internationally. We do obviously use environmental tools for more in-depth detailed analysis of our designs, and we try to keep up to date with what is the most efficient or the best workflow to support our projects. Recently, we visited how we perform wind analysis. And this year, we would really like to push to make these tools more accessible for designers. And last but not least, a very hot topic, AI for design. So after the explosion of those very exciting text-to-image models last year, we started to experiment how we could interact with this technology. And at the moment, we do use it quite a bit at the studio, mainly as something that you could compare to early stages design sketches or initial models. It's more like inspiration, and almost you could compare one-to-one as we would sketch on paper. However, quite quickly we realized that maybe this is not the best workflow, as designers are more inclined to work with images. So then we started to experiment with Stable Diffusion to see if we could translate images into iterate on images that we produce, but that was not a very democratized way of interacting. And in October, we teamed up with Forton Tomasetti for a type of internal hackathon where we tried to bounce ideas and see what we could actually do with this technology. And that led us a week after actually into developing a Rhino plugin, which allowed us, after setting a bunch of parameters, to create 2D variations based on the massing from our Rhino viewport. However, that was all still 2D. So we would get all these options and we could further iterate on them, but that was not 3D. And that led to another thing when my colleagues Pablo and Alfredo joined AEC-tech hackathon in New York. Last year, they pitched what became Dreamhopper. It's basically another Rhino plugin based on dream fields, which converts text into 3D meshes. So it's a plugin where you type your prompt and run it within Rhino and get a 3D mesh result. This is obviously very early days, but very exciting things that we hope to develop further. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Joanna. Beautiful presentation, such exciting projects. I have personally so many questions that I will ask you some of them at the end. Thanks a lot. So next we will have Piash Prajapati. So Piash is an award-winning computational and parametric designer with a passion for generative design, working with AECOM, Dubai. He has a strong background in visual coding and generative art, which he uses to push the boundaries of traditional design methodologies. Piash specializes in using algorithmic processes to generate unique and innovative designs, often utilizing tools such as Grasshopper, Rhino, and Python. Piash's ability to combine computational thinking with a deep understanding of design principles has resulted in numerous award-winning projects and collaborations with industry leaders. He's constantly exploring new ways to use technology to improve the design process and bridge the gap between human intelligence and computer cognition. Thank you so much for joining us, and please feel free to share your screen.
Thank you, Niklas. If you can give me a heads up if you guys see my screen.
Oh, yes.
Yep. All right.
Yeah. Thank
So,
you.
greetings, everyone. Thank you again. Lovely introduction. It's a great pleasure to be here with you all today on this platform and discuss and share some insights on technology and implementation. As Niklas mentioned, I worked with AECOM and Dubai. In the region for quite a while, actually. It's been 7 years here in Dubai, and I've fortunately have had a great opportunity to work on some of these award-winning projects. Happy to share that some of my papers and research work have been published nationally and internationally with exhibitions at Pompidou Center and Venice Biennale. Today, I have three stories for you all. Three different challenges we face these days. When we talk about AI and technology, data plays a very important role. And the whole machine learning slash computational realm, it basically revolves around it. But what happens when there is no data? I come from and I practice in the region where data is readily not available. And what are our turnarounds in that particular case? And lastly, amalgamating the two, the dataverse, where we talk about our design interventions with urban design and planning methodologies. Well, we all are aware of how important an AI technology is like in these days. I'm sure you all are aware of ChatGPT, which is basically taking over the internet everywhere. And its solution it can provide just by writing some prompts, as Joanna was mentioned as well. Data and its application is everywhere around us, right from using pattern recognition algorithms to unlock your smartphones, using your Face ID, or even driving an autonomous vehicle. We all are very familiar on how AI is changing the industries like cybersecurity, medicine, and even manufacturing. And the good thing is, even today, we can see these transition in the field of architecture and design as well. And this brings us to two important questions. What and why of architecture of intelligence? So AI is basically intelligence displayed by machines and softwares. And with tools today, we are bridging the gap between the human intelligence and machine intelligence. To give you all an easier example, we can have a look at the Tesla cars. With every journey, car uploads the data to a cloud server. This data is mainly about road congestion, road openings, the commute time, and so on. So that the next car that comes on the street has now the updated information on what routes to choose. And the way we architects, urban designers, and planners can benefit from it is by analyzing this very data set. You might actually come up with a very simple solution. For example, if there is a road congestion in the city, just by looking at the data set and proposing probably increase in the width of the road or adding an extra lane, we might be able to solve a bigger challenge rather than even proposing a flyover. Now, once we structure these tools and calibrate to our needs, Data can help us automate and optimize. It increases scalability and it reduces the biases and subjectivity. And most important of all, it increases exploration for all the designers. If you have to record the number of possibilities of different design iteration, here's a screen recording of a very basic AI model or a generative model. And in matter of few minutes, it can easily generate 100 plus different design iterations. But it is important to note that the toolkit would just give the form. It is basically the role of designers or architects or urban planners to actually sculpt the functionality out of it. One can actually narrow it down with an evaluation criteria to give us the most preferred option. But what really happens when there is no data available? I work and practice in the region where data availability is a big question mark. Open source data are just not rich enough to draw inferences. So, what do we do in such cases? And as problem solvers, we at AECOM, we choose to build our own data sets. Now, there are multiple ways to use the existing toolkit, such as Google Street Views. Existing build environment can generate different data sets, spatial data sets as well. One can even use social media platforms or basically social media analysis, and you can essentially combine it with object-oriented programming to create your own new different spatial data sets, and which can potentially give you spatial results as well. For example, using Street View APIs without even physically being at the site, one can extract 360 geospatial images to understand the built environment. And the quantum of data that it would help in drawing inferences visually and spatially as well. Processing all of this using image segmentation, our aim is to identify how active an image is through image classification model. It basically suggests which elements of the perceptual world are interactive. The slide here highlights how an image segmentation would work. The toolkit that can understand urban fabric, identify spatial assets, it can quantify urban intangibles such as street activation, user experiences, and even the involvement. These new forms of dataset would greatly enhance and enrich how we as designers can create better urban spaces. Here is a small illustration of how visually we experience a morning walk in the city. And another way to create a dataset is by using GPS tracks. It is easier to map the geo impressions, which can then predict the human patterns and even the movements. Spatial quality can easily be quantified using the number of impressions, an average time a user spends on a particular geolocated point, and obviously the dominant direction of the particular user can be determined using point A point and point B as well, which are again geospatial. Now, what exactly I'm showing here is I'm going to run a short clip which basically explains the brain behind this data set. And once you start overlaying all these different source data sets that you have just created and combining all of these assets, we are creating smart algorithms to build logic and basically identify pattern in these data sets and numbers. And then these data sets are then translated into spatial forms and compositions, which basically represent our movement, walkability quotient, and even our behavioral patterns in the city and the society. But it is important to note that the technology is only helpful when it aids to your needs. Data is only valuable if you are able to solve a problem. Which then brings us to our third and the final segment of the presentation called as Dataverse. I'm happy to share three different approaches of technology-driven design. First one being a small 25 square meters of a Adidas store stationed at Dubai International Airport, which was awarded with the Innovative Project of the Year. Second one being 1.8 kilometer long, approximately 90,000 square meters of an architectural intervention in Dubai, uh, taking inspiration from traditional Middle Eastern settlements to tackle harsh climatic conditions. And lastly, an urban design project or urban design intervention, which is approximately 5455 square kilometers. To give you a scale comparison, over 100 Vatican cities can actually fit in the entire site. Well, even though the scale of this particular project, the Adidas, is very small, it was quite interesting for us to explore the opportunities where we started mapping human movements and the way human moves navigates within the airport terminals as well. Our goal for this project was to create a form that can be viewed from multiple strategic locations, giving the project maximum visibility, thereby leading to the maximum footfall. And by using very simple space syntax tools, we were able to explore data points and visual connectivity. Taking the approach even further, we were able to simulate human movements and navigation patterns on Unity and Grasshopper. Using this, we created an algorithm that can, over a period of time, generate different scenarios of a shortest path to navigate to your goal with the maximum visibility index, which then makes it easier for any designer to set up a form finding algorithm to shape the final output. The next project is a mixed use urban intervention with residences, retails, and commercial spaces, which is Alsif, and it sits right next to the creek waterfront in Dubai. The project essentially takes its inspiration from traditional souk buildings of this region, having wind towers and niche courtyard spaces. Since the site is located next to waterfront, one of our main criteria was to design the stretch to enhance the public movement and improve the visual connectivity across the entire stretch. Upon having the general master plan, it was again, as I mentioned, the visibility was an important factor. We started generating different scenarios, different models, m- quantifying the visual visibility index, and also keeping in mind that this comes from a strong hold of an old uh, historic urban fabric, which is why it was important for us to even map the thermal comfort in this entire region and entire development. So here's the video highlighting the various massing iteration and the final project which is currently on the site. But what happens when the projects are at the city scale? How do we comprehend such huge scales and giga projects? We recently were asked to work on a project in the Middle East where the design intervention was at a city scale, which I mentioned was around 54, 55 square kilometers. And as urban designers and planners, we are aware of scale being one of our biggest challenge, where our interventions are from few thousand square meters to few thousand square kilometers. Thus, it becomes very important as planners and designers to analyze, visualize, and compute the data points and data sets at different scales. So, to sort this, we are working towards creating a toolkit that analyzes the urban fabric at micro, meso, and macro scales, where we see citywide context, interventions at district level, and finally at the neighborhood level. It can seamlessly integrate inputs from multiple platforms such as GIS, Rhino, Excel, giving us the flexibility to visualize all of them at the same time. And in order to achieve this, our aim is to quantify the essential objectives such as accessibility, land use diversity, visual connectivity, thermal comfort, and most importantly, walkability in the region. And as an intelligent toolkit, we are creating an evaluation methodology for these objectives with flexibility to create real time goals. Amalgamating all the three factors, all of the above factors, our vision is to narrow it down to three major KPIs. First one being evaluating the contextual fit, highlighting how efficient the design intervention is. Asset value evaluation from clients and real estate perspective. And lastly, and most importantly, mapping the livability index for the end user engagement. And these KPIs are our key objectives for any project. And to implement the same on the projects of this scale, it becomes essential to understand the new norms that are required in the city. For instance, a 15-minute city concept is no longer successful in the region because of the harsh climatic conditions. The tool has to be flexible enough to adopt to the new norms, basically making 15-minute equivalent to 5 minutes in this region. Here is a short animation highlighting how we tackle parametricism at a city scale, right from mapping human movement, the visual corridors, the contextual fit, thermal comfort, and obviously the livability index. The same can be automated and carried out at the overall scale. Here is the God's eye view of the project. And here is what it feels like to be in such spaces. And with this, I would like to wrap up my presentation. Thank you for your time, everyone. Please do feel free to get in touch and happy to share more details and insights on this in our future conversation. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Fabulous presentation, gorgeous projects. Thanks a lot for sharing. Awesome. Next, we have Tyler Williams. Thanks, Tyler, for joining. Tyler is the Field Innovation Leader for DPR Construction. He has over 20 years of comprehensive professional knowledge. He's a former union carpenter, experienced superintendent, senior superintendent, and field operations manager. As the Field Innovation Leader, he supports, develops, and drives potentially disruptive innovations forward from various stages of development, conceptual, incubation, implementation, etc., at local and national levels. He works to build a strategic partnership with startups and outside vendors that align with DPR's core values, innovation goals, objectives, and a strategy in order to positively impact DPR's frontline workers. By working cross-functionally, he promotes open innovation and encourages group and crowdsourcing tools and processes that inspire creative thinking from the front lines of the construction industry. So happy to have you, Tyler. Please feel free to share your screen and tell us more about your work.
Thank you so much, and good morning to those on the West Coast. Those are a couple pretty heavy and very detailed presentations. My head just almost came off with a lot of that stuff, so thank you so much. I'm going to share my screen now and kind of walk through what DPR has as an innovation team, right? We have 5 individuals that sit across the country. I'm going to share my screen now and we'll kind of walk through a little bit of what that looks like. Let's see here. Can you see my screen? Can you see me? Can you?
No, not yet.
One second.
Tyler, is that arrow underneath? See if you can.
Here we go. Share. How about now?
Awesome. Yep. Great.
All right. Well, thank you so much again. One of DPR's missions is ever forward. It's a core value that we really take to heart, that our mission to be most admired by the year 2030 comes with a steep climb up the mountain. To quality and innovation for the construction industry, what Toyota did for the auto industry. So we really take that value to heart in everything we do into pre-construction, prefabrication, innovation. How do we approach quality? How do we look at effectiveness and efficiency on our projects? How do we waste? One of the things we do as an innovation team, so we have a corporate team, as I mentioned, there's about 5 of us that sit on this team. We're spread out across. There's has a subject matter expertise field innovation. We have a robotics lead. We have a virtual reality lead. We have another that's fill quality. We have ones that work with some of our partners in equipment sales. So we've got together over the last 2 years and really looked at what are our innovation goals as a team, right? Develop a world-class innovation process. So that means compile and scale, and I'll get into what an ICG is at DPR, to the family of DPR companies. So in our construction practices, but those other companies to build them up as well. Be strategic partners, not just customers, right? So clarify process, vendors, influence, and timely evaluation of submissions. So I'll dive into that just a little bit. Strategically, from the field innovation side, I've worked with the Hiltis, the Milwaukee, the Makitas, and really look at what the tools that they're offering to our frontline workers, how they can positively impact our craft members.
Tyler, I'm so sorry to
Yes.
interrupt you. Your screen seems to be frozen and we can't see. Let's see. Are you right now on the most admired slide? That's the slide that we can see, and we can't see you. For some reason, your screen is frozen. Do you want to maybe stop sharing and share your screen again?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, great. Maybe let's try again. Will be better this time.
You think the innovation guy could have this figured out, right? How about now? Can you see the innovation goals slide?
Yes, yeah, we can see that now. Perfect. Yes, yeah, we can see that.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you for catching me before I just kept going on a tangent there. However, I'm really excited about, and what we've been doing is, like I mentioned, working with the Hiltis, right? Utilizing some of their prototype tools, further develop those. But what I like to do is take that prototype tool or that tool that might be hitting the market soon, getting it in the hands of our field workers, the one that's going to be impacted by it the most, and say, what do you like about this? What could be and then take that back. We'll just say Hilti, Milwaukee, say, hey, this is a great, but if we make these improvements, this could impact us in a far greater way. And that's probably one of the things I'm excited about of what we've done is our leverage workers and expertise to push the industry in a way. So furthermore, like validating new ideas. So alignment on key challenges. We're about to launch this thing called Problem Place, where we want to know what are in the industry, right? And what they are on our projects. Hear from our frontliners, right? Hear from our project engineers that are what keeps coming up as we'll call it a problem. Let's make improvements to those, because we feel what may happen with this is we're going to get a bunch of symptoms, right? Problems, but certain technologies, innovations, communication, training, leadership, furthermore, right? And then what we're also doing is we're building a network of entrepreneurs, right? So what a ICG is at DPR, it's a innovation core group member. And these core group members are all over the country. And we call them kind of our army, passionate about innovation, really want to move the company to that. We work to leverage them to help us become most admired by 2030. So we develop targeted. We have these core group members do onboarding when we have new employees, so that we're constantly working back to that ever forward. How can we push our employees to be thinking of a better mousetrap? How can we do something different? Right? Let's not make the same mistakes that we have on the last project. In addition, right, a balanced mix of problem solving and opportunity generating, right? So key challenges drive strategic pilot efforts, right? So yes, we might have a problem that we want to solve. However, there's also some really shiny things out there in the industry and in the market that we should test and try, because they may solve a problem. They may incentivize others to continue to develop further things. They may work to help steer the industry in a way. So that's pretty exciting about what we've done at DPR. And then nurture new venture opportunities, right? So influence, we have an arm called WND Ventures, right? We invest in potential startup companies. We work to cultivate them up, develop their solution or their technology, right? And then get their leadership to align and support for employee engagement, right? So we continue that ever forward flywheel. Can you see my next slide just to make sure that before I get too far? Innovation core group?
Not yet, Tyler. We still see innovation goals. It may take a second. If you want to click, maybe. Okay.
Still no?
We can see it now.
You can see it now. So
yes.
Innovation core group?
Yes, yeah.
Right on.
Thank you.
I mentioned it a moment ago, Innovation core group, right? Purpose and mission. So what this volunteer army does is we educate, support, train, lead, right? We want to take the knowledge, experience, and ability and create that team. This team could be on a project. It could be for a business unit. It could be for an entire region on the West Coast, right? So innovation, influence, innovation goals, and business plan alignment, right? So we have our business unit leaders. We have these innovation core group members sit next to them, figure out what are the pain points? What can we do to push the envelope? What is something we can do on this next project that nobody's done, right? Support local ideas and advise local innovators, right? One thing I love for these innovation core group members to do is be out on the sites, right? Maybe not the one they're working on, maybe go to another one, check it out, find out, be in the field with our craft and really learn from what they're doing and what they're experiencing. So many times I've been on sites where we're, all of a sudden I realized that tool didn't exist. But what I learned is that this individual found something that they needed to do, right? They figured, I need to be more efficient at this. This needs to be more practical. This hurts my arm. This hurts my shoulder. And they'll a lot of times innovate their own solution and then just keep it in their tool bag. So what we've tried to do is cultivate using these innovation core group members to get those ideas, right? Expand on it. DPR also looks at helping with patents. So we've had several successful examples of a field member that has a great idea. Maybe we'll call it a concrete sleeve for vertical alignment, right? And layout. They have this idea, they 3D print a model and we'll work to patent it, right? Help them create a business model for it after that. Create accountability for pilot and leaders to participate, right? Be an advocate and liaison for work group and peer groups. Engage in feedback. So as we pilot, right, we want to know what's working, what's not working. We need to capture that data so that we're not continually trying the same thing or not learning from it, right? And then encourage participation. All right, we're going to try to go to the next slide. Let's see what happens.
Sure. Tyler, do you mind putting your presentation on the presentation mode? Actually, Phil suggested because he's apparently on his phone, so we can all see it better.
I'm not sure what that means.
So if you click on present on Teams, try that one. So it will be full screen. Your slide will be full screen. Because right now we can see all your slides on the left side. Do you want to try present in Teams? Maybe that's the right button. Some button that will make your presentation full screen.
Tyler, or you can press F5. That would go to the presentation mode.
Let me come back to the screen here. F5.
Okay.
I'm so sorry.
Worry about it if it's...
Here we go. What about this?
Yeah.
How about now?
Yeah, let's see.
Oh, it says join a meeting to present.
Yeah, seems like it's still the smaller version, but don't worry about it. We can still see, everything.
All right. I'm so sorry.
Yeah. No problem. No worries.
Well, we'll continue on, right? Anatomy of an idea, right, is a continuous improvement framework, right? So we have problems, right? Problems typically arise from broken process or missing records, right? Move over to solutions. Solutions are processes and tools working in concert, right? And then we have pilots. Pilots are experiments to test if a solution solves an intended problem. And we see we kind of continue to just work the anatomy of this idea, and hopefully we get back to the same point where, yes, that solves our problem and not just the symptom. I want to give you an example of one that came from the field. So we have an internal team for door frames and hardware. And what they do is they basically are subject matter experts in all things door frames and hardware packages. And in one of our project teams in Nashville wanted to streamline information to the field. They had this idea, let's get some QR codes, link them to access the documents related to each opening. And what we did is we opened up basically how we share information in the field just by labeling each opening. We had a wall type of construction, rough opening sizes, hardware schedules, security information, QA, QC checklist. But what we realized is that we had been not sharing information related to the building of the project very well. So now we have anybody that has a camera phone, which we can imagine most everyone does on a site now, can access this information instantaneously just by clicking a QR code that started from layout of the building. We pour the slab on grade, we put a QR code on the slab where that opening is. Now what we noticed was after 1,500 openings, we maybe had 5 of rework just by giving more information to the field and allowing them open access to utilize this. We've since developed this a little bit further, and it's kind of taken off more from just door frames and hardware to rough in behind the wall. Now we're trying to do QA, QC using QR codes. And I really feel like one of the positive pieces of COVID was the use of QR codes. We got very used to it, right? And the ability to do so. So I can talk about this one for quite a while because this one was pretty exciting to us. Another one that we tested was Hilti exosuit versus the Suit X, right? We had these out in the field, and what we learned is they weren't quite ready for mass adoption. This wasn't a tool that would solve everyone's problem, but more task specific. We also learned that the industry wasn't quite ready for it yet. And I should say industry at DPR, right? Where a lot of folks, they weren't ready to kind of take down the gruff piece of construction. So what we learned is we need to work backwards with these new individuals that are entering our workforce and say, hey, this is a tool that can elongate your career, right? Make it so that when you do retire or later down the road, you're not as beat up as some of the old salty dogs. And that just comes from engagement in the field, right? Capturing those plus deltas, learning from them, actually listening and engaging. And then the last one I'd like to show is this is a solution that was a little bit difficult to implement just because it was so new to the market. Nobody knew how to deal with a reverse fan thruster that can stabilize a load, an overhead load with a crane. So we had to work with Cal OSHA, our own risk people, the project teams, and really work to get them on board. And now we've kicked off a pilot where we're actually doing an experimental variance with Cal OSHA that will hopefully eliminate the need for taglines when using this VITA system, just because it could be a safer opportunity for our folks. So one thing that's exciting with this is this partnership, right? And now we're educating more folks on, hey, there's a safer way to do things. We don't have to just do it the same way we've always done it. And it might be a little scary. It could be disruptive, and that's okay as long as we have our people in the field. We've checked all the risk boxes and we've communicated, and hopefully we'll see what happens from there. These are all the slides I have for right now. I'm happy to answer any questions. Apologize for the technical difficulties and kind of threw me off a little bit, but hopefully you got the gist of what we try to do at DPR when it comes to innovation and field innovation specifically.
Yeah, thanks so much. I know everything worked perfectly fine, and thanks for sharing all that. Your process is very interesting, I'm sure, for all of us to know how your process is like, how it all works. So we have about 10 minutes. So dear audience, please feel free to post your questions. And in the meantime, I'm going to ask a question for this is a question for all of you. So can you tell us about a piece of technology or tool solutions that you have discovered in the last, like, let's say 3 or 6 months, and you've applied it to some of your projects? So some of you mentioned, so Joanna talked about, Houdini, and I think Freeform was one of them. Not completely sure if it was something form. So yeah, please tell us about like the power of these new tools that you've discovered, and the process of testing these new technologies. How does it work, piloting, and then adopting into your workflow, and then some of the big challenges, main challenges you've had, and also the success. So we can start by Joanna, and then Piash, and then Tyler.
Sure thing. That's a very good question. So what you've mentioned was actually Spaceform, and this is a tool that we've implemented a little bit more than 3-6 months ago. So we had some collaboration with them, and then we kept on building on top of that tool. And this is basically something that we use as an immersive media tool. So it's a VR environment used for collaboration. And the other tool that you've asked about, that was the material modeling. So that is mainly pushed by my colleague Alex Bursak, who's a wonderful designer, and he has this really big interest in pushing those tools. But basically what he brought into the studio was really good skills in Maya, and also then some other people like Alfredo, they looked into Houdini in Omniverse. So if there are people more interested into that, it was actually presented at AEC-tech in New York last year in November. But to talk a little bit more about implementation of those technologies, that always takes a little bit of time, obviously, and opportunities on projects. So it's not really straightforward, and we just try to find opportunities where we can help designers use these new tools. And a really nice thing that usually happens is that when someone sees really nice results in one project, then they want it in another one. So there are always challenges with these technologies. Also, something that we've been trying to implement more recently is AR. And that has been quite challenging to do because we have a lot of international projects. So you just get one shot to present something to the client. Not everyone feels very comfortable with that. So we were looking for opportunities nearby here in London to implement that technology.
Great, thank you so much, Joanna. So Piash.
Sure. I think if I look back at 3 months or 6 months down the line and things that have been happening all over the world, I would vouch for OpenAI. That's basically the word prompt platform where you can just put in few words and can give you some results, like some amazing results. And there have been some parallel interfaces to work on that as well, such as DALL-E, Stable Diffusion, Disco Diffusion, Midjourney. The things are limitless. People have been developing a lot of apps for it. Well, I come from a design background, which is why I think I speak in terms of visuals. But I think it's probably one of the greatest tools that are there out at the moment. For the reason being, if I talk about ChatGPT, you can even write a source code to do image segmentation, right? So instead of me going to a university learning how to code, be it C Sharp or Python or Java or anything of that sort, the tool now can take the abundance of the information from internet and can actually give it to you. Now, the drawback that I see over here is oftentimes you won't get the precise thing that you're looking for. You have to struggle, you have to try harder in order to get the right results. But I think in near future, there's a very great potential where this becomes readily available to everyone, and people will start making more use of this, be it any field. I would say, yeah.
Great, wonderful, thank you. Thanks for sharing, Tyler.
Yeah, there's two that I'd like to highlight, and I didn't mention them before, but those of you who have heard of the Dusty Layout Robot, looks like a little Roomba, right, that travels around your job site, and it can print lines, soffits, door openings, what have you. that was a difficult one for us, right? As we first looked at the technology, really looked at understanding it, how efficient it made us. But what we didn't quite understand was the adoption to the field, right? At first, we tried to use a field technology leader, and that was the wrong way to go. We needed to actually take carpenters, layout folks that are already doing this work and arming them with the dusty technology and the new training so that they could be the frontliner that's actually pushing this new technology to the field. So we've seen some great leaps and strides with Dusty and doing layout across the country. With that, right, you look at Hilti's Jaibot. Jaibot's the overhead drilling robot that can go in and basically run a site attached to a total station, and it can has a 6-foot radius. And what we're seeing as far as a trend that probably will take on pretty quickly is multi-trade layout. So now you have a GC taking all of those points from our MEP contractors, we're plugging them into the Jaibot and we're running it on site. So it's drilling all of the holes for all the associated contractors that are needed. It's drilling like 500 holes in a day, right? You're not going to get an individual doing that without breaking their shoulder and their body. That's a trend I'd really like to kind of highlight. And then the emphasis on the multi-trade layout. So we're all kind of coming together in that partnership to increase efficiency, decrease ergonomic strain on our individuals, right? We're also breaking down some of those labor shortage issues because now we're able to spread it out, right? So those are the two I'd really like to concentrate on.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Tyler. We have 2 questions. So Rami is thanking everyone for great presentations, and he's asking about the trends that you see in the construction methods having impact to the pre-con design and coordination process. And he's also asking about how your firm is establishing a culture when it comes to the realities that AI is enabling time priority to creative tasks. So please, any of you that is interested, take this question. There are 2 questions.
When it comes to the first, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, Tyler, go ahead, please.
I was just going to kind of, I guess, kind of lay back on the Jaibot thing. As far as the impact to pre-con and design coordination, the multi-trade piece, right? Where we're modeling everything. We're taking those models and shoving them into one big one, and then enabling that to have the Jaibot come out and do a bunch of work for us. That's a trend that I think that helps bring everybody to the table. It also pushes further coordination to get your coordination done early because we're going to start drilling. There's going to be things happening, right? It's going to cost a lot more money as we go.
And what I would like to add over here is there's one of the construction coordination tools that I've recently come across is the Revit. Well, again, it's much more for the architectural interventions where different subconcept designers, architects, infrastructure, everyone basically sits on a single platform. And potentially how Joanna was showing in an AR environment, you can mark up. Similarly, it's much more of it's a desktop version, but essentially it's available to everyone. And you can just go there, mark up, set up some camera angles just to highlight where your problems are, and then you can start tackling it, or probably just create a flag for a particular, let's say, architectural query or anything of that sort. So I think that's a pretty good tool in order for the coordination, I would say.
Yeah, I definitely agree. That enables communication to be so much more smoother in certain areas.
Great, thank you so much, everyone. So we're almost at time. So Phil is actually asking Tyler if you heard of Sablono out of Berlin. They are very trade focused for activity sequencing.
I have not. I'll make a note though to check them out.
Awesome. Thank you, Phil. Wonderful. Thank you so much. I'd like to again thank all our 3 amazing panelists for beautiful presentation. We all learned a lot, and thanks to our audience for joining us. I know for Piash and Joanna it's pretty late, very late Friday night. Thanks again for making the time. So the video will be saved on our YouTube channel. Please join us for our next events and have a great rest of the day and wonderful weekend.
Thank you so much. Have a great weekend.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
Good night. Bye-bye.
Great.
Good night.